Hello my fellow model builders, I am the European Scale Modeler and today I want to build the USS Asheville with you, a 1988 Revell kit in 1:130 scale. The kit was first released in 1971 under the name USS Defiance. In 1988 Revell re-released it as the USS Asheville before renaming it back again into Defiance in 2002. As was typical for Revell at the time, the instruction manual is rather short and kept simple. Unfortunately, the decals have developed a yellowish tint over the years, which we will take a closer look at later on. The overall molding quality is satisfactory and leaves little to complain about. I believe the discoloration is not Revell's doing, but rather the result of the passage of time, even though the latter, especially when it comes to Revell and their molds, still tends to cause negative surprises to this day. I started by removing the first parts from the sprues and cleaning off the initial mold lines and imperfections. This was followed by assembling the propellers and propeller shafts, which I then attached directly to the hull. Once that was done, I moved on to the deck. Since Revell has always been Revell, the first step was to enlarge some of the holes using a hand drill, as not all of them were sufficiently sized. It is important to check this beforehand to avoid preparing parts with glue, only to realize afterwards that they do not fit, which would inevitably lead to additional problems. As the final task on the hull for now, I attached the rudders. Now I can already start adding the first deck structures, beginning with the shield for the 76mm gun at the bow, as well as the shield for the machine gun at the stern, so our American friends can fire freedom without getting their feet wet. Once this was completed, I could move on to preparing the deck structures, ensuring that the brave sailors of the United States Navy, unlike their British counterparts, would have a dry bridge to stand on. After a bit of sanding, I was able to glue all parts together neatly using Tamiya extra thin cement. This went without any major issues as everything fit together properly, in contrast to other Revell models with their more challenging fit. Yes, I am definitely looking at you, Revell Arizona, and your 1 centimeter wide gap in the hull. Even though I usually enjoy painting more, I have to say that up to this point, this model has been a lot of fun to assemble. It is especially satisfying to know that I am not only working with plastic dinosaurs, but also on a model kit that is older than me. It is well known that Americans like their weapons, so now it is time for the Peacemaker. The 76mm gun in its turret is supposed to be movable according to the instructions. I do not need that since it will never be used in the end, and because covering it in cement is simply more fun. So, at this point, I chose to ignore the instructions and hope that fans of movable parts will forgive me. The fire control radar, like many other parts of the kit, fit perfectly without any issues. And with the help of a little bit of pressure, all go into place. Maybe a bit more just to make sure. In Germany, the moment when the hull and turret are joined together by tanks is traditionally called a wedding. Let's put it this way, I forgot to film the wedding and the moment when the hull and superstructure were connected. As we all know, that surely will not bring any bad luck, right? Finally, we come to the part I enjoy the most besides painting, priming. Everything was prepared quickly, and I also reassembled the stand for the ship since the primer will be the only paint it will receive, apart from a bit of dry brushing, which I will show later. Not only is it good to step outside for a few minutes and get some fresh air, it is also helpful when spraying Vallejo hobby paint. Despite the rather pleasant smell, we really do not want to inhale fully atomized, potentially carcinogenic paint particles. So, just like during the Corona days, we put on a mask as well. I must have inhaled a bit of paint that day because I cannot otherwise explain why I thought it was a great idea to loosely place the smallest and lightest parts into a cardboard box and then spray them with full power, and actually believe that this would be a brilliant idea. But hey, somehow it actually worked, and now we can continue with a bit of laziness. To save myself some work, I masked the waterline not just once, but twice, hoping that this second rather stupid idea might also turn out well. After masking everything to airbrush the lower hull, my luck finally ran out. I did manage to mix a decent color by eye using Tamiya XF7 and XF9, but I completely forgot to add X20A thinner. I corrected this later with a second mix, and out of pure shame, deliberately forgot to record that part. Once this was finished and everything had fully dried, I masked off the lower hull. I then roughly mixed Tamiya XF19 with X20A thinner in a ratio of 70:30. Using this mix, I sprayed the upper part of the hull, as well as the individual deck structures in the gun. At this point, I accidentally forgot to start the camera, so the airbrushing of the superstructure happened off camera. I never understood why people enjoy the tension of horror movies and the excitement of something bad potentially happening until I started model building. When removing masking tape, every fiber of my body is prepared to discover paint that has crept underneath the tape, or even worse, paint being torn off with it. But when that does not happen and I can finally breathe again, I think I feel exactly the same way horror movie fans do. And even more so when I see that my stupid plan actually worked and everything turned out very satisfying. Apart from the waterline at the bow that is not 100% straight, I am very happy with the result. With the magical power of video editing, I managed to complete the rather tricky masking of the deck structures and the superstructure in just a few seconds. Using Tamiya XF53, thinned with the same mixture as before, I could then turn my attention to the deck. It looks very dark at this stage, but it will become a bit lighter later on. With the help of Tamiya cement, I glued the hull and the deck together. It was a bit tricky, but with some patience and in the end a little force, everything found its place. Using Tamiya XF01, I painted the top of the funnel and the end of the American Freedom Defender, or in other words, the barrels of the main gun and the machine gun. Against all common sense, and because I could not find anything suitable on the aftermarket, I decided to test whether the decals and their yellowing might not be as bad after all. Like every good German, I then chose to never mention my mistakes again and have absolutely no idea what just happened here or where the decals suddenly disappeared to. My hand painting skills are not the best, so I try to keep them to an absolute minimum whenever possible. This time, however, there was no way around it, and I had to paint some small details on the deck structures and the superstructure using Tamiya XF24. To my own surprise, and after finally investing in slightly finer brushes and better lighting, and shamelessly using my camera as a magnifying glass, everything turned out well in the end, and I am very satisfied with the results. If we ignore the shaky camera, you can see me painting the only life buoy using Tamiya XF2 and XF7. Fortunately, it did not end up glowing too brightly, which was something I was initially worried about. For the first time in this build, we will use Revell paint, specifically Enamel 92 Brass Metallic, and paint the ship's propellers with it. Just after that, I switched to using super glue to attach everything. After all the airbrushing and preparation, this is a very enjoyable part, because even though it is a small model, many parts finally start coming together. In the past, I used cement for this, but cement is not actually a glue, it only welds the plastic together, which is not a good idea when applied to painted parts. Super glue is my best friend here, as it can be applied very precisely, and, if used sparingly, leaves little to no visible residue, even though everyone, and especially me, should be careful not to get any on their fingers, where it then tends to remain as a faithful companion for several days on my fingertips. At this point, I will let the video run a bit longer without commentary, because in my opinion, this is one of the most satisfying parts to watch in the building process. To properly prepare all unassembled parts and the ship for weathering and to protect the paint from potential mistakes and thinners, I applied Tamiya Clear Coat X22 mixed with X20A thinner in a ratio of approximately 1:1. After this is done, we can finally start weathering, beginning with Tamiya Black Panel Line Accent Color. This allows us to bring out the fine contours and details of the model, which would otherwise not be as visible. By using a flat clear coat before, the panel liner now can reach into even the smallest recesses perfectly through capillary action, almost flowing into them on its own. When applying the panel liner, the goal is not to flood the model with as much paint as possible, but to carefully enhance the details. I treated the deck a bit more broadly here, but left the hull mostly untouched, as this model has very few details in that area to work with and the color would otherwise become too dark. After everything has dried a bit, we can use white spirit or other enamel thinners, along with a brush or cotton swabs, to remove excess panel liner. On flat surfaces, it can also be gently spread to create some variation and make the surfaces look less uniform. I personally like doing this to give the model a used look, as this is the style I prefer. Others like to take it a few steps further, adding rust effects to the hull and areas where it would naturally occur, or dark accents around exhaust outlets. I prefer to keep things subtle rather than overdone. In the end, what you do is entirely up to you, and you can hardly do anything wrong as long as you are happy with the result. Now I'm also moving into unfamiliar territory, as this is my first time using oil paints. Here, I am applying the so-called oil dot filtering method on my model, using individual dots of Winsor and Newton titanium white applied with the help of a toothpick. It is helpful to place a very small drop of paint onto a piece of kitchen paper and let it sit for a while to remove excess oil. Then, using a brush slightly dampened with white spirit, I pull the dots downward in vertical lines to create a subtly uneven surface on the hull. This technique is often done using several different colors instead of just one, as I am doing here. However, I chose this approach because it is my first time trying it, and because I want to preserve the original hull color as much as possible, while still giving it a bit uneven used appearance. Since we are already using oil paints, we can also do a bit of dry brushing to highlight the letters on the nameplate. When dry brushing, almost all of the paint is wiped off the brush onto a paper towel or kitchen paper, leaving only a faint trace of paint on the brush, which is then used to gently pick out the details. Unfortunately, I forgot to start the camera while weathering the other parts. However, the overall process was exactly the same. Finally, we reach the point where we can install the 76mm Peacemaker. As is fitting for American engineering, something of course breaks in the process. With the help of my best friend, Super Glue, this was quickly fixed and the Deliverer of Freedom is now ready for action. The machine gun at the stern needed a bit more love before it was ready for combat. It first had to be assembled properly. Once again, super glue was the weapon of choice to get the job done, and once again, to the disappointment of fans of movable parts, everything was firmly fixed in place using super glue. After this stage, I sealed everything off camera using Tamiya Clear Coat XF86 and gave the model a matte finish. Now we come to the final part of this build, rigging. This is the first time I have done this myself on a ship, so once again we are sailing into unknown waters. For the rigging, I used a simple thin thread, as suggested in the instructions. I took this thread from an old kit that I never used, and did not order anything extra for this build. All lines were tied and attached as carefully as possible using small knots, a fine pair of tweezers, and finally secured with super glue. I am not 100% satisfied with the result, but for a first attempt, and when compared to the picture on the box, I am actually quite happy with it. And that brings us to the end of the build, and we can now take a look at this beautiful ship. Overall, I am very satisfied, and I still find it remarkable that kits like this can still be found after all these years. I know that some collectors would have left it untouched in the box, but I see it a bit differently. If not to be built, what were these wonderful model kits produced for in the first place? From my point of view, the build itself was quite pleasant, with very few issues or fit problems. For a kit that is more than half a century old in its original version and has seen only minor changes over the years, it holds up very well and certainly does not need to hide. In my opinion, this kit is suitable for beginners as well as for slightly more advanced model builders. Even though I have not built a large number of models myself yet, I still want to give it a rating and award it 7.5 out of 10 EU stars. Thank you very much for watching. I would really appreciate your comments, likes, and of course a subscription. Feel free to leave feedback on both the video and the build. Stay committed and stick together, if necessary, even with superglue. With nice greetings, your European scale modeler, and see you next time.